Hey everybody, this is Patrick back with another episode of RevTalks. Today we're here with John. How's it going, John?
It's going well, Patrick. How are you this morning?
Doing great, doing great. Thanks for coming on here today. If you're new here, we're obviously interviewing marketers, founders, those in the B2B space, and everything in between. So, John, can you give me a little high view about the company, the business, what you do, and how you do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the background is kind of interesting because it's really central to what we started. So I'm an old guy, so I've been in the business for many years. I started a digital marketing firm in 2004, had that for 17 years and saw some kind of deficiencies and challenges within that space serving clients, one of which was the ability to not understand what people were doing when you're sending customers to a brand site, right? You could personalize an email, but at the time we couldn't personalize an experience or anything. So what we have today, we put ourselves in the conversion rate optimization bucket. It's a pretty big bucket. However, the way that we focus on the conversion rate optimization is leveraging data, particularly first-party data. So anything users do on a website, we track all those actions and then provide them with a more relevant experience. So at the end of the day, Patrick, think about this. Why should everybody have the exact same website experience? Makes no sense. Netflix doesn't work like that. Spotify doesn't work like that. So our whole focus was really to reduce the friction and try to provide an environment where you're allowing people to, get to the end result faster with less friction and just better results overall.
Nice. And how do you pronounce the company name specifically?
Fulcrum. And our tagline is leverage your data. I know it's kind of cheesy, but if you think about Fulcrum, right? So
No, I like it. That's cool. And in terms of like ballpark annual revenue, where are you guys kind of operating out of?
We're in the ARR space. We're fairly new. We're just around a little below 2 million on the ARR side.
Nice. That's super solid.
Yeah, we've gone through a lot of iterations, going back, thinking from, I had a services business in terms of the marketing agency. And I thought, well, gosh, if I just have a software company, that'll be so much easier. I'll just build it and then the machine will do all the work. As there's some truth on the edges to that statement. You need to constantly be upgrading and modifying your approach, and specifically with this involvement in today's world with AI.
I agree.
So there's a lot of maintenance involved.
It's not just like we're gonna come out here and pump out 1,000 visitors and 1,000 users at 100 a month there.
No, sounds great. I mean, on a spreadsheet, it looks fantastic, but you roll up your sleeves and get into the day-to-day, and it's a completely different deal. And there's a ton of service involved with that because people want the easy button.
Right. I know you mentioned you started off in the digital marketing space with the firm. A lot of the audience that watches my channel are marketing agency, sales, digital marketing firms, things like that. What initially got you in the space 17 years ago in that digital marketing sort of era of things?
That's a good question. So I started off at ad agencies and was in that space for a while, and then was in media sales, was selling for CBS television back in the day. And when I first started out, I had a completely different strategy. It was literally around content marketing. This is weird, but at the time we had a product that basically was called the Economy Tracker, and it profiled local markets from an economic perspective. And we started to private label those for banks. And so banks used that as collateral. They ran them in different trade magazines, all types of things. And then it became the point they needed help with distribution. And then that got us into email. Once we got into email, then everything opened up from
And
there.
was it more of email outreach or email marketing with existing?
Email marketing for companies. We worked with insurance companies, hospitals, just keeping their clients engaged with, different opportunities was really it. It wasn't the outbound cold. It was more of the relationship building.
Sweet. And just curious, because obviously we are within our own marketing agency, we are heavily considering not shifting, but adding nurturing in the email marketing as a step or as some sort of a service on the back end or front end. We're not quite sure how it can be positioned yet. How do you track results with email marketing specifically with retention? Because for me, it's like, oh yeah, we're sending X amount of emails a month to your list. And then the business owner or company is like, thanks. Like, I mean, we saw some upsells here. We saw some how do you manage the customer relationship? That's always been a question I still haven't fully figured out.
That's the $1 million one. They're paying you for incremental revenue, pure and simple. That's it. That's the only reason that you've got a relationship with the company, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so being able to track that can be challenging. So Obviously, having some fundamentals, the proper UTM structures on everything is very important. Having a good attribution system. I know people really struggle with GA4, but there's some other ones out there. We have attribution built into our things. So it's really, really important to have those tracking mechanisms and to understand, for example, let's say you're working, I'm just making it up, with an insurance company. And within the email, you're trying to promote a new product line. What is a visit on that product detail page worth? What is a request a quote worth? What is an application? So there's all these little steps, and you need to understand what each of those are from a monetary value perspective. So at the end of the day, at the end of the month, you can go back to your client and say, look, we drove this many people to the site. Hey, Patrick, that's great, but unless the cash register's ringing, it doesn't, okay, well, guess what? These people did this action, this action, this action. So if you can assign dollar values to those different things and then track over time, did those people end up converting? Then you understand, hey, it's going to take 60 days for this person that we've exposed to convert. And if you've got a system that can understand like all the behaviors, and this isn't a plug, but all the behaviors, then you can understand how they're moving through that customer journey and have some predictability scores on that.
I like that. That definitely explains it. And that makes sense to me now. And there's obviously a lot of different ways to go about this sort of marketing and digital marketing scene too, because obviously it's changed a little bit. How have you transitioned your skills from the marketing firm and the digital marketing space to Fulcrum and sort of more software development side of things? How have you transitioned that, and how has that process been for you?
Yeah, it's been a learning curve for sure. So you got two elements. So the old element is the marketing, the fundamentals, things that are really kind of just etched in time, things that just work, right? And then service. I mean, there's some handful of things that are just paramount to delivering, a good business and having recurring customer revenue and retention and all those things. Then you move over that into the other side of software development. Okay, I'm not a developer. However, I've had to learn things. I don't write a line of code, but I need to manage the developers to the vision that I have, and also make sure that I'm checking the vision, that it's in somewhat line with reality of what can be developed and how much it costs to develop or how much it takes to maintain that development. So those things translate pretty well from the marketing side, because at the end of the day, it's about, maintaining, high fidelity and good service with your customers, leveraging strategies that actually work, and having a game plan. Just throwing stuff against the wall, hoping it sticks, that doesn't work. And so many people focus on the top of the funnel. Like, Patrick, if I ask you, hey, you're a brand, let's say you're an e-commerce brand. Hey, Patrick, what is your acquisition strategy? You'd probably go on and on and on talking about bid strategy, creative, all these things. And those are all good. There's nothing wrong with those. However, if I ask you the next two questions, what's your conversion strategy or what's your retention strategy?
Yeah. Just as important.
Probably hear just crickets, Yeah.
Just as important, for sure. And that component critical, as well.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you implement some of these technicalities into the website is that more on the acquisition side of things? When prospects land on your customer's website, it's more customized, so they're able to see what they need to know? Or is it more on the back end? So after your customer signs their own customer, you guys are dealing with more retention strategies. How exactly do those things play a role? Good
question. It really resides on the brand side. So if you can think about us, we're basically the eyes and ears of everything that's happening on their site. And our job is to make sure that environment, that customer journey is curated to the best possible experience, the most efficient experience possible. So going back to your question, if I'm a brand new user coming on to a website for the very first time, I should have different messaging than someone's been doing business with that brand for the last 3 years, right? So I'm a first-time user. Hey, show me some customer retention stats. Show me this, show me that. Show me why you're better. Help me develop some confidence in doing business with you, or at least stick around long enough to understand what you do. If I've been a customer for 3 or 4 years, show me some new products that are there. Tell me about this, tell me about that. I don't need to go back to the fundamental introduction stuff, right? So those are the ways that we kind of, at a very high level, start the segmentation of the user journey based on who those people are and what they've done.
Absolutely. And would you say if you didn't start off in the more top of funnel acquisition space with the digital marketing firm 17 years ago, and you started off with retention strategy, would you say now you'd be more pivoting towards top of funnel acquisition? Or do you feel like starting off, it's sort of a rite of passage, every young guy or girl sort of starts off with the top of funnel acquisition, the outbound, and then slowly sort of not necessarily get smarter, but just their skill sets stack and things transition to more retention. Would you say that's kind of like a typical lifeline of the marketer, or just how you?
I think it's a good question. I think it's important to have a very a wide aperture on the whole thing to understand everything. So yeah, you got to start working on the factory floor before you can be up in the office.
Yeah.
Now, there are ways you could just specialize in just that conversion and not have to deal with that, because literally we don't deal with the acquisition. That's on their side. Our job is to make sure that anybody that comes to the site is getting a meaningful experience. So we can help the acquisition in the sense that, so let's say somebody's coming from a Facebook ad and it's a vacation website and it's a beach vacation with a family. When they hit the website, we can read that UTM and we can modify the image, the language, everything so that it's congruent with what they just came from. Right. And that allows that interest to stay there. And so while we're not driving the acquisition, we're certainly adding top spin to the fidelity of that acquisition.
I like that. Yeah. So you're using what they see in the creative when they land on the page based off the intent of what they want. And I think it's very important too, because especially with entrepreneurship, it's like totally right about working on the factory floor. But the thing is that, like, even when you're young and you start off in the marketing space, I mean, there's so much TAM, there's so much addressable market. There's so much opportunity, especially online, where the ground floor is like $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Top line. And it's like, I mean, that's not too shabby. So it's just crazy how there's so many levels to everything.
There is. And Patrick, one thing I would say, if I had to do things over again, because I've made a ton of mistakes, obviously, the riches are in the niches, meaning you get something that works really well and just stay solid. One of the mistakes that we made in the agency is that we got really broad, and we were phenomenal. I mean, our customers, we didn't churn customers. The only time we lost customers when they'd get like purchased, buyout, and then we might not make the turn, those types of things. But it was very expensive and hard to support all these different lines of things that you're delivering. We did it well, but it's not a great way to scale a business. So my 2 cents would be stay in very tight niches if you can, and you can maybe move a little step to the left or a little step to the right, but you don't want to be doing everything from SEO to direct mail to this to that to website development and all of. Nobody wants the one-stop shop. It sounds great, right? But in reality, it's
and if it's too broad, you're not a specialist in one thing, and then obviously that implies that you don't know what you're doing, and you can just do a bunch of spray and pray approaches.
Exactly. And people want specialists; they don't want generalists.
Right. Absolutely. Right now, how are you guys typically charging for the Fulcrum services? Are you guys doing mainly the SaaS model, MRR? I know you mentioned you guys focus on ARR. How does that kind of work?
Yeah, it's an interesting model. So we're a little different. So SaaS, typically software as a service. We call ourselves SaaS, software and a service.
I like that. Cool.
And so what we've found over the years is people want access to do stuff, but they don't want to do stuff. So they don't want it to be, incumbent upon an agency or a vendor to have to do everything, because that they lose control. Totally get that. At the same time, they don't want to do any of that, which makes sense. And so the way we engage with our clients is we have it's a fully managed service, and it's very straightforward. I mean, it's not hard to do. However, when we're talking with customers, we see ourselves as being an asset, not a liability, in terms of, let's say we're working with an agency partner who has 4 clients. Now, they would have to have somebody go in and manage into our platform, do this, do that, put all these things together. We know our platform inside and out. We know the strategies that work. We've done this a ton of times. We're super efficient. So what if agency, we just say, look, we'll manage the entire service, give you a playbook of everything we're going to do that lines up with the objectives, give you the reporting, you can white label, whatever, but we just make it really easy. and we test everything from an A/B test perspective, so we know what value we're adding. So at the end of the day, I think people in the time-starved environment that we're in right now want things to be done for them, and so that's why this managed service software and a service is really allowing us to grow and retain our customers.
I agree. And it's definitely for a specific market too, which is great because the market that, you guys are serving as well, they also want to see what's going on. And I found a great benefit in customers actually wanting the transparency, not just with like reporting or emails being sent out every single week of what's going on, but like live dashboards and actual UI for the customers to see. And those things are like really retention boosters, especially for software as a service. And then you have like the service tacked on to it as well, or a mix of both. And like those things are really what helps customers, at least from my perspective as well. Being a consumer of a lot of these softwares too, really help retain myself to these different.
And I think it's also just, the way that we also disseminate our information is, we have a C-suite roll-up report. It goes out to, everybody once a week. And it's just black and white. And they get to see what's going on. If they want to dig deeper and log in to see all the stuff in real time, they can. I can tell you, they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I want to have the ability to see all this stuff, but the chances of me actually logging, remembering my stuff, going here, doing that. But if I see that the top, these are the things you're doing, and here's the ROI that you're providing, and it's up and to the right, they're going to be satisfied. We're making money for them. They don't have to worry about things. And it's that easy button scenario.
Nice. And before 17 years ago, you started the digital marketing firm. What were you doing before that?
I was at CBS television sales. I was selling commercials, selling airtime. So think about this. Like we were talking about attribution with the email earlier. So this is 1996 or somewhere in there, right? And you're selling commercials, and you go back to the car dealer, for example, the next week. Hey, you want to buy some more? Want to buy some more spots? Yeah, sure. Did they work? I don't know. I mean, there was no attribution back then, right? I mean, it's crazy. And now today we know everything about everybody and what they're looking at. Scrolling, exit intent. I mean, it's just crazy. So
would you say times were easier back then?
I mean, simpler. I wouldn't say easy, but it was simpler. But I mean, you had to get up and scrap. I remember as an account executive at the television station, I would go, and this is going to date myself. So all you listeners that are younger than me, you're going to like jaw on the floor. I would go to the public library. Okay. Go to the public library. I would go do you guys know what microfiche is? It's basically think about taking pictures of the newspaper and putting them on a reel. And then you would put these reels into a machine and you would spin through and you would see the different pages fly by. So I would go into the library. Let's say it's January 1. I would get the newspapers for June, 6 months out. And I would scroll through and I would see who's spending a bunch of money in the newspaper. And then I would go and start setting up appointments and calling those guys because I knew they had budget.
Yeah, that's very smart.
So you say easier or simpler.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy, but I mean, you had to fight for stuff. And
absolutely. And then now you would just look on Apollo and be like, oh, okay, this company's making.
Yeah, right. We would go out, I would go out to the clients, suit and tie, and wait in a room and meet with them. I mean, there's elements to that I really wish were still around because there's so much.
I agree. I think half the online entrepreneurs in the space really don't have that skill.
No.
And really that would separate 95% of people away from others. And that takes a lot more courage, because even in person for me, especially not in door knocking or anything like that, but meeting obviously in business in person is like, I'm like, damn, okay, this is like legit. So like even I'm almost like, okay.
Picture this, Patrick. So let's say you're working for a company. Let's go back to the television. You're sitting in a lobby waiting to talk to the president of the company. You've got a big proposal and you're sitting across from two of your competitors. They have everybody come in on the same day to pitch, and it's either all or nothing. And your sales manager's back at the office is depending upon you to get that deal. And if you don't get it, there's going to be hell to pay back. I mean, these guys didn't mess around back in the day. I mean, there was no PC. There was yelling. I mean, it was a different deal. So, anyways,
yeah, I can imagine. That sounds like it's right off of Wolf on Wall Street.
yeah, no, very, very similar to that. Glenn Gary, again, Ross, all these different things, coffees
Nice.
for closers, all that kind of crazy
So
stuff. So,
now, especially over here, we're dealing a lot with AI. Claude's getting
yep.
popular. ChatGPT has been popular, obviously. Cloud Code, everything. How are you guys currently implementing AI? I know you mentioned earlier with UTM tags and intelligence and stuff like that. How are you using AI to automate specific workflows, maybe less hiring positions because AI is able to assist in certain areas? What are some ways you guys are utilizing?
Yeah, there's two primary ways. One's for us, one's for the client. So for us, our guys are using, obviously Claude code to, just really accelerate their production. I mean, pure and simple. And then the second thing is on the client side. So if you think about all the data that we have the ability to, and we have a data scientist working with us as well, but also with AI. Think about our recommendations, right? I mean, we're weighing inventory, we're weighing price, we're understanding so the AI is helping us identify the appropriate products for that person based on the behavior, location, what they purchased in the past, all of those data points. And then in addition to that, we also have an element where we can provide clients tremendous insights into their organization and provide them some predictability. I can tell you if this user is going to be a high value customer in the first, handful of clicks versus a low value based on patterns, based on when's this person going to churn? Hey, how many people are at risk for churn? We can tell our customers that. Okay, great. What do we do? Well, let's send out an email campaign as a win back. And then when they come to the site, let's treat them a little differently. So using AI to understand the behaviors and the triggers is, again, going back to that cheesy tagline, leverage your data. You've got to use the information. You can't just use your gut. I mean, it's not going to cut it anymore.
And going back as well, back to the digital marketing firm in those days, what made you specifically want to stop the digital marketing firm and sort of transition more to software as a service?
The big thing was that it was going back to kind of the initial story I was telling, the frustration. So we were sending tens of thousands of people to the brand site through our email campaigns every week. I have no idea what they're doing. I mean, GA wasn't really going to tell us anything. And if it could tell us a little bit, what can we do with that? We couldn't reach back out to those individuals because that's not how GA works. There's no self-identification. So it was the fact that, we could personalize the email, but we couldn't personalize experience. And I had no idea what people were doing when they got to the site. And I had no way to modify their experience. And I saw that as a massive opportunity. And at the time, there was really nobody doing much of that. And, there's obviously some things that are out there right now for sure. We're not the only company doing this, but we do it a little differently. But those were the things that were really drivers to start the software. Plus, nice. I thought it'd be super easy.
And so given that if you were still doing the firm right now and actively working in the firm and owning it, would you say that given the stage AI is at right now, with this intelligence, this ability to customize different things, would you have stayed in now that you can adapt sort of those attributes now and you can track things as you know with Fulcrum? Would you have stuck with the agency?
I don't think so. And then the reason I say that is the things that we were doing, if I look at where AI is going, we could certainly use that to leverage, but there could, depending on the clients you have, some are buy or some are build, right? And so if you've got buy clients, AI is going to be your friend because it's going to help you, manage and generate all of the services that you need. However, if clients are at a different tier where there's kind of a build and using AI, they're going to take that stuff in-house. So it could go either way. It just really depends on what that clientele looks like.
That makes sense. And that being said, we have thought about our services as well and transitioning to have an offer to where it's like, hey, we'll run this as a pilot program for 3 months. We'll get ROI and then we'll give it to you in-house. And so there's like 2 separate fees, a build out and then an in-house fee. What's your take on that for specific agency pricing? Because it kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone, but most of the time agencies end up keeping those customers on retainers because those customers just continuously need the service. And some of them are like, yeah, we want it owned in-house. So it's kind of a win-win, but obviously has its pros and cons. What's kind of your take on that?
I would I would say that I would try to maintain that relationship and the production of the services. And the reason I say that is the I'll build it, you run it. Lots of times it sounds good on paper, but then they realize that they have to run it later and they just don't want to do anything with it. I would be of the opinion, it's like, look, this is what we do. We're better at this than you. This is our specialty. This is what we
I like
do.
that.
This is how we do it every day,
Great.
you know, and just and
Absolutely.
just own that. But one thing I will say, Patrick, it's super important to understand the metrics, the KPIs around what things are worth what. Because at the end of the day, if you're just saying, hey, we had a 20% open rate in the emails, that's not enough. Like, what did those people do? And so again, whether it's us or some, you need to understand when those users come into that environment, what are they doing? Are they doing high value activities? Are they looking at videos? Are they looking at spec sheets? Are they, getting into customer testimonials? Are they displaying high intent behavior? Because if you just say they went to the website, that's
Right.
not good enough. I need to know, did these people really engage? And then did they end up converting? And so having mechanisms to track that is critical.
Makes sense. Definitely. And attaching value to something without it having any value is like, it's something in the game you have to do because or
No,
else
you
nothing.
need to control the narrative on that. And I'm not saying it from like a power perspective. I'm just saying it from a math perspective. You just need to be able to track. You need to have the information.
True. And especially in B2B when most of the selling is done very logistically and like, okay, this is the ROI here. What is this worth? What is this worth? It's very technical selling.
In the B2B space, 73% of all of due diligence has been done before they raise their hand for a quote or a call or whatever. And so if you can understand that you've been supporting them along the way and they've had multiple sessions, you have been the catalyst to get them to that point.
I
You
like
need to
that.
be able to get credit for that and be able to articulate it. But you have to be able to figure out how to track that. Because if you
Exactly.
can't track that, then I mean you don't have an ROI to stand on.
Right. And that just has the value. It just speaks the value too of assets as well, and having those assets and all the information being sent to prospects before anything ever happens as well. Did you end up exiting the agency or selling to a strategic partner or just keeping it as a cash flow business or what ended up
It was kind of a little bit of a hybrid exit. There was a little bit of sell, a little bit of retain, and then over time it was just too difficult to support. And so we had a couple of really big customers. One was a big hospital group, and so when that was kind of purchased, then that changed things a little bit. Um, but in my mind, I was thinking, oh, I'll just have both of these, and they'll feed off of each other. Trying to run two businesses like this.
it's probably pretty tough.
Yeah. So again, going back to the comment I made about mistakes, yeah, that's one of them.
I see.
Be optimistic, but also be realistic, right?
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Are you allowed to speak on numbers of how much you guys exited on or what
No,
that kind
I'm not
of
able
like?
to talk about that part.
Okay. No worries. I always like to ask because it's very
Yeah, of
interesting
course.
and everything like that. So, um, got a couple more questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of them is what is a challenge that sort of keeps you up at night about Fulcrum that you guys are actively working towards?
The challenge really is just around keeping pace with technology, honestly, right? And so, you think about like, well, what does AI look like in 18 months and 24 months? Would that supplant what we're doing? Could that? We've looked at it really hard, and there are things that it could do, but then there's a couple of things that we've got a little bit of at this stage, a moat around. So it's always worrying about like what's around the corner, what could happen. But then at the same time, those technologies that you think could be disruptors are also enablers in efficiencies and everything else. So it goes both ways. And so that's one of the things that keeps me up at night. The other is just making sure that we're taking care of the team that's building this. Is everybody happy? Because at the end of the day, it's not the technology. Technology is a big part, but it's the team, and that's really important to us as a culture. So those are probably the two biggest things that keep me up at night.
Nice. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And looking ahead 6, 12 months on the line, where do you see Fulcrum sort of taking itself in terms of team size,
Yeah.
AI, goals? Where do you kind of see it?
Yeah, we're really excited around the data part of what we have. So if you can think about two buckets that we have this user experience. So it's personalized user experiences, product recommendations, very, AI driven, very smart algorithms. The other side is all this data that we have and matching that, pattern matching, and using, machine learning, AI analysis to be able to help companies predict, where they're going. And this is stuff that are things that we might not even be able to control. Like there's some things around, hey, did you know if people from this channel or these campaigns drive this? Here's the CAC. We don't do media buying. We don't do any of that. So there are things that we can provide insight on that have massive impact, that we're not driving the impact. And then there's a lot of other things that we can drive the impact on. So I'm really excited about the significance of that data, because we have so much of it. And it's if you're not we always say, your data is an asset. Treat it like one.
Nice.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I noticed you mentioned you guys are using a various amount of channels for upfront, top of funnel, things like that. Obviously, it's not a one size fits all solution. Which channel is bringing you guys probably the most opportunities or qualified calls a month, would you say?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we get so much out of this on a referral basis. I would say that we make some good connections on LinkedIn because of the profile and the nature of being able to see people and have some good conversations, like we're doing here. And then, email always, does work, although it's a very saturated one, so it can be hard. I'm of the opinion, just like if you're investing in the market, you just need to diversify. You've got to have a wide range of these things, because there's not one that just works better than others. Referrals obviously are the best one, but you can't just bank on just those.
Yeah. You can't really measure referrals, obviously, as much as everybody would love to.
Yeah, it would be the best, but it is hard to measure.
And you mentioned email, cold email outreach or email marketing, like or newsletters, things like that with prospects.
It's a little bit of both. It's about staying top of mind, with people that you've done business with, maybe in the past, from other things. We always try to stay in front. And then on some outreach, we try to be very specific. So, we focus primarily on e-commerce companies at a certain size. And so we try to really talk to those people, because we can also see that, hey, they're not using any of these tools on their site. And whether it's us or anybody else, the stats out there, like if you're not using personalization within your environment, you're leaking a tremendous amount of revenue. And so, we just try to, say, look, we're going to help you with this. So it's just a little bit of that narrative and a little bit of that outreach.
Sweet. That pretty much kind of wraps up all my initial questions on my end. Again, appreciate you coming on. Do you have any comments, questions, concerns for me?
I just think that, I like what you're doing. I like the questions you're asking, and going back to some of the things, if I could just speak to your audience, like, just, be the best you can in that one smaller space. Don't try to paint it too broad, and really, really, it sounds cliche, but think about the end user, your customer. What makes them successful? Is it taking, is it giving them more time back? Is it, creating efficiencies with, different marketing channels they're doing? Is it generating incremental revenue? What are those things? Because you need to measure those. And the most important thing is you need to ask what those are, right? Because if you don't know exactly what's going to motivate somebody to do business with you, what's going to help them, you're missing. And people want to help. And so ask the questions.
Sweet. Yeah, makes total sense. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Jumping on here. Hope you have a rest of your morning or afternoon.
Perfect. Patrick, thanks so much. Good to see you.